Om Shanti. Are you all happy? Whole India is awaiting the Prana Pratishtha of Ayodhya Sri Ram Mandir. This Ram temple is built in a very grand manner uh, across the area of 70 acres of land at an estimate of 1800 crores. Now the question arises, why such grand temple is built only for Ram and not for any other Hindu deities? The simple reason behind asking this question is Sri Krishna is famous for reciting the Gita verses, which is the number one religious scriptures of the world. So it is the mother of all scriptures, of all religions. So if you build such a grand temple for Sri Krishna, it can be justified. Because if there is no Gita, there is no praise for Sri Krishna. If there is no Bible, there is no praise for Jesus Christ. If there is no Quran, there is no praise for Muhammad. They are basically praised for giving those religious scriptures. But what did Sri Ram do that we build such a grand temple for him? Obviously, that is going to be the number one biggest grand temple in India in the near future. But the actual question is, did Ram deserve such a big temple? Because he didn't give anything to this world. So, if you take the essence of Ramayana, it just starts with the kidnapping of Ram's wife Sita by Ravan, and Ram fights with Ravan and brings his wife Sita back. But he makes Sita to enter the fire to prove her chastity, and she proves it. Even after that, people doesn't believe Sita, so they badmouth about her. On hearing this, Sri Ram sends Sita back to forest. This is the whole essence of Ramayana. So, where do you find anything that justifies the glory of Ram in Ramayana? Because this is something any ordinary human being will do. If his wife is kidnapped, he will try to get her back somehow. So that is exactly what Ram did. But it doesn't stop there. He doubts his own wife, which is the biggest blame on Lord Ram. Sita is famous for her chastity, but Ram is doubting such a chaste woman, which is not acceptable at all. So he is not even a role model for a good human. Then how can you build such a grand temple for such a character? And also, recently we have been hearing voices that we should recreate Ram Rajya. So what is Ram Rajya? To send the wives of everybody back to forest? Is that what Ram Rajya means? Because that is what Ramayana preaches. Actually, Ram and Sita's marriage happens in the presence of the great sage Vishwamitra. But soon after that, he goes to the forest to perform intense tapasya. So he is totally unaware of everything that happened after that. That Ram and Sita went to forest, Ravan kidnapped his wife, and Ram fought with Ravan and brought her back. Then again, he made Sita to perform Agni Pravisha, and even after proving her chastity, she is sent back to forest because people of Ayodhya no longer believed her. So Vishwamitra is totally unaware of all these incidents. But now he comes out of his tapasya and he visits Ayodhya. He wants to meet Sri Ram. On hearing this news, everybody is quite shocked because they all know Vishwamitra considers Sita to be his own daughter. So what if, after knowing what happened to Sita, he cursed Rama and Ayodhya? That's the greatest fear. So even in addition to this, the Guru of Sri Ram says that he recently had a wild dream, the meaning of which there is a great danger, including the death of Sri Ram. He reveals this to Ram himself. On hearing this, Ram says the most important line, which goes, "I have sacrificed my entire life to God Shiva, and also I have the blessings of you. So under your blessings and under the mercy of God Shiva, nothing will ever happen to either me or to Ayodhya." Although Sri Ram actually speaks these words that says he has sacrificed his whole life for God Shiva, but nowhere else in Ramayana it was implied like that, except at one point after killing Ravan, that he does prana pratishtha of Shivling at Rameshwar. Other than that, Ramayana doesn't show like Ram has sacrificed his whole life for God Shiva, because on hearing Ramayana we will only remember that it is a fight between the kidnapper Ravan and Ram, and finally Ram succeeds, and again he sends back his wife to forest. Even in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in many verses it is mentioned, I, the Ishwar of all souls, I, the Parameshwar of the world, I, the Sarveshwar of the world. So although we think it is Sri Krishna who speaks, but in the midst of those verses we see in multiple places that it is mentioned as if God Shiva himself is speaking. Actually, that is the truth. Actually, Gita was spoken by God Shiva and not by Sri Krishna. So we all know that Pandavas follow the path of Sri Krishna, which is why they finally succeeded. But they have actually given the glory of God Shiva to Sri Krishna in Mahabharata. Actually, none of them, whether it's Mahabharata or Ramayana or Bible or Quran, they were not histories. They didn't happen at all. They have given some spiritual secrets in the form of a story, but still the truth in those stories is very little, maybe 5% or even lesser. So the same happens here in Ramayana as well, except for the fact they haven't shown Shiva or Krishna who guides Sri Ram throughout his lifetime. But he is actually following the path of God Shiva. Only when you know the direct knowledge of God Shiva, which is available absolutely free of cost in all Brahma Kumaris Rajyog meditation centers, will you be aware of what actually these religious scriptures, Ramayana, Mahabharatam, Bible, and Quran means. Let me brief the actual uh, knowledge of God, Shiva. God says there is a 5,000 year time cycle in this earth. So that is called one kalpa. The first half of the kalpa is heaven, and the second half of kalpa is hell. We are obviously living in hell. But the good news is the hell is about to end pretty soon. So that is why God Himself has come. He has entered an old man's body because He doesn't take birth like other humans. In the case of Ram or Sri Krishna or Jesus, we all know that they have taken birth. But God Shiva, on the other hand, in no religious scriptures will you ever find that He has taken birth from certain parents. God dwells in a golden red colored light world called Parandam, which is also called Parlok by Christians. God is one. So the God whom we call Shiva is the same God Christians call Heavenly Godfather and Muslims call Allah. The reason God Shiva is invisible to anybody is because He doesn't take human form, He doesn't take birth. But still, it is only God Shiva who has the knowledge about Himself and all souls and also this world cycle, which constitutes 5,000 years. So He says, while we were in heaven, we did not know what vices like lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego are. We were as innocent as a newborn baby throughout our lifetime, which is why even in Bible Jesus Christ says, as long as you become innocent like a newborn child, you will never enter heaven. In heaven there will be buildings made of golden bricks, so that should say how wealthy we were while we were at heaven. And everything will be first class. The nature will be first class. The animals, they don't fight with each other. That is why it is mentioned in many religious scriptures that cow and lion will take water from the same pond at the same time, which means even lion and tiger will not feed on other animals, while in heaven they feed on plants. It is also mentioned in Bible. The reason they were all so happy, they have no idea about vices, is they were all soul conscious. Soul is the life energy that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus have the habit of applying tilak on the forehead. So that's where we souls exist. And the deities of heaven were aware that they were in fact souls and not this perishable body. So they always have the consciousness in the forehead, from where they operate through this body. So it is the souls that see through the eyes, speak through the mouth, perform activities through the legs and hands. They were aware of it. So that is what soul conscious means. So they lived happily for the first 2500 years while it was heaven, mainly because they were soul conscious. After that, they lose soul conscious and they got attracted to the outside world. Till then, they were constantly happy because the true nature of the soul itself is blissfulness and peacefulness. But since they lose soul consciousness after the first 2500 years, they become fully body conscious and become addicted to sensual pleasures, which is when they become slaves for the five vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego, which is present both in men and women. So it is collectively called 10-headed Ravan. Other than that, there was absolutely no one ever with 10 heads. It is just a symbolic representation of these five vices that is present both in men and women, and they have combinedly called 10-headed Ravan. It is also called Maya or Satan. So the last 2500 years is the kingdom of Ravan, because we were all became slaves for the five vices. So it is we souls which is called Sita. We are kidnapped by Ravan because the whole world is the Ravan's kingdom now. So now God comes from his supreme abode, which is the golden red colored light world. He enters an old man towards the end of Kali Yuga. Just 100 years before the end of Kali Yuga, he enters an old man's body and he names that old man as Brahma and start giving knowledge through his mouth. So those who are able to recognize God by his words, they become the direct children of God through Brahma, which is why they are also called the sons and daughters of Brahma, which is in Hindi Brahma Kumar or Brahma Kumari, which is the name of this organization. So God reminds us of how we were originally 5000 years before. So how in the middle we became body conscious, thereby we became slaves of Ravan. So now we have to kill Ravan within ourselves. It doesn't exist outside us, it is within us. In heaven, Satyug, people were totally unaware of these five vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. Now the question arises, if that were so, how will they give rise to a child? So God says, it is only through the power of yoga the wife gets conceived, and there will not be any sort of physical relationship. So just they will think that they want to have a child and the wife gets pregnant. That's the power of the thought of a pure soul. And that is the reason we build temples for those who resided in heaven. Sri Ram, Sri Krishna, they were all residents of heaven and not God. And where have they all gone? They have entered the rebirth and they have entered the Kali Yuga and they have started committing sins just like you and me. It is only then God Shiva enters Brahma and reminds us that we were originally deities, and it is because we become body conscious, we have lost our original characters and start committing many sins, because of which we get punished by nature, by diseases, by relationships. So in order to escape from those punishments, you have to destroy all the vices that is registered within your soul. It is in the soul, intellect and mind and sanskar are present. So how do we purify this soul? God says, first consider yourself to be a soul again, and that is going to be very difficult because for the last 2500 years you have been fully body conscious. So you need power to retain soul consciousness. So to fill yourself with the power of concentration, you need to remember God as a point of light as much as possible, because he is also a soul just like us. So he is also an invisible star that dwells in the golden red colored light world. So we have to remember God as a star in the golden red colored sky as much as possible, and also we need to consider ourselves to be the soul that is distinct from this body, so that needs intense effort. And also we need to see each other as souls and not as bodies. Only then will we be able to conquer vices, especially the number one vice, lust. Lust is the greatest enemy. So it is because of lust in the scripture Ramayana, Ravan lost everything because of his lust over many girls, including Sita. And God says, if you are able to conquer all the vices, including lust, by staying in remembrance of me, then you will become as pure as you were once while you were the resident of heaven. Then you are eligible to enter heaven. So this is the essence of the direct knowledge of God. Now look at Ramayana. In Ramayana, Ram gets married to Sita. How does he get married? Sita's father keep a test for Ram, that he needs to lift the arrow called Shiv Dhanush, which means the arrow of God Shiva. But when he lifts, it breaks. But we think it shows the manliness of Lord Ram, but it is not so. It means he breaks the rules of God Shiva, because God gives this knowledge to conquer lust. So when someone gets married, especially in Kali Yuga, it basically means he is going to indulge in sex. So he is breaking the rule of God Shiva, because of which he loses the kingdom, or he is ineligible to rule a kingdom. So that is why he is sent to forest, which means the forest of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga itself is a forest now, because there is no essence in anything. Everybody is filled with selfishness. But the Satyuga is quite the opposite. Everybody will be so divinely. So in order for us to enter heaven and rule heaven, we should be able to conquer vices. So that is what Sri Ram has been doing throughout Ramayana. The reason he breaks the rules of God Shiva, which was portrayed as the breaking of Shiv Dhanush, is because he is also a slave of Ravan, and Sita is also a slave of Ravan. So both are actually kidnapped by Ravan. So after getting the knowledge of God Shiva, we are slowly conquering Ravan, which is why it is always shown that Sita as sitting under a tree and doing intense tapasya. But we think she is thinking of her husband Ram. No, actually she is thinking of God Shiva. Even Ram is thinking of God Shiva. So remembering God is actually what Raja Yoga is all about. So we are burning the sins by the fire of intense yoga, that is by remembrance of God Shiva, which is shown as Sita walking over fire to prove her purity. Okay, now they have conquered sex, but sex is not the only vice. Sex, attachment, ego, everything is there. So the next comes the attachment. Obviously, one will have great attachment towards his wife. Although he has conquered sex, now there is another enemy called attachment. So that is why he sends Sita back to the forest. It doesn't mean he is sending back Sita back to forest. It actually means he is conquering attachment that he has towards Sita. That is what it actually means. He is sending her back to forest. That is why Vishwamitra, on hearing the news, instead of cursing Ram, he says, Ram is an avatar. What he did is simply a great thing, because uh, according to the rule of royalty, it says, for the one who rules the kingdom, he needs to sacrifice his most loved ones in the test given by God, which proves Ram is not a god. At the same time, he has passed that test given by God Shiva by sending Sita back to forest. Actually, as I mentioned earlier, it means he has removed the attachment he had towards his wife. And why is God now asking us to leave lust, greed, anger, attachment, and ego? Just think for yourself. It is because of lust we create a family and we become so selfish. And we create kids and we are so attached to them, which makes us even more selfish. Which is why we see many political leaders, they accumulate so much wealth illegally. Because they are addicted to these five vices, they cannot be a good leader. But heaven is a pure world free of any vices. So, in order for you to enter heaven and to rule heaven, you have to prove to the world and to God that you are absolutely free of vices. So, that is why you will be confronting many tests in the form of lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. See, after conquering sexual attraction towards one's wife, what is the relationship between the two? It will be like brother and sister, right? So that is why Ram's brother Lakshman accompanies the couple to the forest. Do you think one will take brother along with his wife to anywhere? So it actually means he is trying to convert his wife into his brother. So there's a ongoing conflict between the brotherhood and wife. So finally brotherhood conquers, which is why he sends his wife back to forest and he retains his brother, which means now Sita is a brother's soul for Ram. So soul is always male, so it has some deep spiritual meaning. So that is why even though Sita is a woman, the soul of Sita is a male, which is why it is considered as a brother of Ram. So that is his aim given by God Shiva. So that is why the brother is named as Lakshman. Laksh means the aim. But even after making his wife as his brother, there will still be attachment. How does he conquer? In the end, he even sends his brother Lakshman in exile due to some reason as per Ramayana. Instead of going into the detail, we should not lose the essence, so I'm skipping those details. So it actually means he is even removing the attachment towards Sita. That's why even after converting Sita into a brother or sister, he is sending her back to forest or anywhere. And after conquering attachment, he is now fully eligible to enter heaven. So that's why he is taking bath in the river Sarayu and he attains moksha. He becomes Vishnu and enters heaven. So that is actually the story of you and me that's happening right now. We are taking knowledge from God Shiva and our aim is to become Lakshmi or Narayan in heaven. But the glory doesn't belong to Ram or Krishna, but it belongs to God Shiva, who makes the ordinary residents of hell into the residents of heaven, like Lord Ram and Lord Krishna. Not only in Ramayana, it is all the same message is also conveyed in Mahabharata and even in Bible and Quran. In Bible and Quran, Ibrahim, who is also called Abraham in Bible, he has no child for a very long time. He becomes really old. So his wife Sarah gets worried, and he asks his husband to uh, get get her servant, her maid servant, consumed, so that they will have the heir for his property. But it is in Quran it is mentioned as his second wife, but here in Bible it is just mentioned as the maid servant of Sarah, the first wife of Abraham. But when Abraham reaches his 100th age, Sarah becomes pregnant. So Bible and Quran goes to magnify the glory of God. So we actually skip the actual essence. Now the son of Sarah is the younger one, right? So the son of maid is the elder one. While they were playing together, the elder son was making fun of the younger son. On hearing this, Sarah gets really angry. So now her ego takes off. She shouts at her husband Abraham, saying that how can a child born to a maid be our heir? So take both the maid and her son to the forest and leave them alone and come back. And he gets worried, and God says, do as your first wife said. So he simply takes his second wife with her son and leaves them in the middle of the forest and return. Now remember what Vishwamitra said, to be a good ruler, you should be able to sacrifice the most beloved ones in the test kept by God. So that is exactly what happened here in Bible and Quran as well. So God ordered him to leave his second wife and their son. So obviously one will be more attracted and attached to the second wife more than the first wife, because that's why they get married for the second time, right? So it doesn't mean you have to leave your wife into the forest. It just means you have to remove the attachment and sexual attraction you have for your wife. So that's the basic meaning. And now Abraham is left alone with his first wife and her son. Now in a dream, God asks Abraham to sacrifice his son. Just think, now he is left with only one son, and God asks that son to be sacrificed. Without having any second thought, he takes his son to the forest, and at the time of killing him, one angel stopped him from killing and asked him to sacrifice a goat instead. So that's why people celebrate Bakrid without even knowing the actual secret behind that story. The actual secret is not you have to sacrifice your child or go to God, but you have to sacrifice your attachment to your kids, because that's the greatest attachment, right? So the actual glory of Ramayana goes not to Rama who played that role, but it is to God Shiva who guides Ram throughout, but that is hidden in Ramayana. So they don't show the involvement of God Shiva, which is actually the greatest mistake in Ramayana. Similarly, the actual prize doesn't goes to Sri Krishna, but it goes to God Shiva who actually spoke Gita. So the real Gita you can find only now in all Brahmakumari's Rajyog meditation centers. So the Gita that you find in the path of devotion is not the true Gita. Of course it contains some truth in it, but still there are many mistakes, and the main mistake is they have replaced the name of God Shiva with Lord Sri Krishna. So it is by learning the true Gita from God Shiva that we become Lord Krishna or Lord Ram in heaven. So the Ram Rajya actually means the Rajya or kingdom opposite to Ravan. Now it is the kingdom of Ravan. After the destruction of the kingdom of Ravan, this world will be renewed into the kingdom of Ram. It doesn't mean the Ram of Ramayan, but it means the heaven created by Ram, which is God Himself. Interestingly, the first king of heaven is not Ram, but Lord Krishna, which is why in Ekadashi there is a function called the opening of the gateway to heaven in all Vishnu temple, which means Vishnu is the first king of heaven. So the actual Ram temple they built in Ayodhya actually glorifies the original Ram, which is God Shiva himself. So we all know that previously there was a mosque. After demolishing it, they are building Ram temple now. And also there is some archaeological evidence that there were Hindu temple before the building of mosques. So that is why they have given permission to construct Ram Mandir again. But the interesting thing is whether it is mosque or Ram Mandir, it is the same, because the Allah is God Shiva, because it is just another name for God Shiva by Muslims, and in Christians they have called him as Heavenly Godfather. If Mughals knew beforehand that it was actually the temple of Allah, they wouldn't have demolished it. And also if Hindus knew that the Babri Masjid is actually the temple of God Shiva, they wouldn't have demolished that either. At least now let's hope both religions understand this truth. And heaven is now being established by God giving this knowledge to us. Only very few out of millions will take this knowledge, because only few will enter heaven. Only few will make effort to make themselves pure and enter heaven. So whether it is Lord Krishna or Lord Ram, they are in the making. So now we have become the direct children of God Shiva. So we are now children. So after the destruction of this world, we will be taking a rebirth in heaven, where we will be ruling heaven. That is why in the Ram temple of Ayodhya, they are doing Pran Pratishtha of the child form of Ram, which actually represents you and me, who is taking knowledge directly from God. I know not everybody can understand this video, but if you have understood this video and you have listened till the end, it is damn sure that you are one of the deities of heaven. So in order to read the direct knowledge of God, please go to the nearest Brahmakumaris Rajyog meditation center in your area. You can Google it for yourself. You will also find the Murli online in all languages. You can also Google for it. We will also be giving some important links in the description below. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching.